Hey everyone, I'm here because I just need to get this off my chest, and maybe get some advice or perspective. My wife, Ashley, and I have been married for 8 years. Things were good, or so I thought. We were your average couple, with a mortgage, busy jobs, and 2 little kids who kept us on our toes. But lately, Ashley started acting differently. It wasn't anything obvious at first. Maybe she was a little more distracted, her phone glued to her hand more often than usual. She used to leave it lying around, but now it's always face down or in her pocket. Then came the excuses for why she was staying late at work, or why she was too tired to hang out. I kept telling myself it was just stress. After all, life gets hectic, right? It wasn't until last week that the pieces started clicking into place. We were watching TV, and Ashley got a message that made her smirk. I teased her about it, but she shrugged me off and said it was just Karen from work being ridiculous. Except, when I walked past her later, I saw the name, Josh, pop up in her notifications. Karen? Sure. Josh? That didn't sit right. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but curiosity got the better of me. I didn't snoop, not yet. Instead, I started paying attention. On Tuesday night, she said she was going to a work meeting. Normally, she'd let me know when she got there or was heading home. This time? Silence. So, I tracked her location on our shared family app, something I hadn't done in months. She wasn't at work. She was parked at some random apartment complex. That night, when she got home, I asked her casually about the meeting. Her answer didn't match the vibe I felt in my gut. Something was definitely off. That's when I knew I had to dig deeper. The very next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. While Ashley was in the shower, I went through her bag, feeling like a complete creep but desperate for answers. I found a receipt from a fancy steakhouse, dated the same night as her work meeting. It wasn't for a group dinner, it was for 2. I held on to the receipt all day, trying to decide how to confront her without losing my temper. When she got home, I asked her point blank, "How was that work meeting?" She answered, "Same as always, boring." That was my cue. I pulled out the receipt and placed it on the counter. Boring, huh? Then why does this say you had a cozy dinner for 2 at Cafe Milano? Her face strained of color. For a second, I thought she might confess, but then Ashley went on the attack. "Are you seriously going through my stuff? What's wrong with you, invading my privacy like that?" I stayed calm, barely. "What's wrong with me? Ashley, you lied to my face. You weren't at a work meeting. So, who were you with?" She rolled her eyes and muttered, "Oh my God, you're being ridiculous. It was just Karen and me grabbing dinner after a rough day at work." I didn't think I needed to explain myself. But something in her tone felt forced. Like she was scrambling. I knew she was lying. After our confrontation, Ashley stormed off, calling me paranoid and controlling. I didn't follow her, I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at that stupid receipt. My mind was racing, my chest tight. Was this really happening? Was the woman I built my life with, the mother of my kids, lying to my face? That night I couldn't sleep. Every little thing Ashley had done in the past few months came rushing back. Her sudden obsession with her appearance. The way she'd laugh at texts and then quickly put her phone away. The way she'd stop being affectionate unless I initiated. It was all so obvious now, like I'd been blind and suddenly someone turned the lights on. I felt like an idiot. Angry. Betrayed. But mostly, I just felt empty. The worst part was the doubt creeping in. Was I overreacting? Was she telling the truth about Karen? Maybe I was blowing this out of proportion, ruining our marriage over a stupid receipt. But deep down, my gut told me I wasn't wrong. I needed more proof. I couldn't let it go. Something was nagging at me, screaming that I was right, and I needed to know the truth. The next morning, while Ashley was busy getting the kids ready for school, I found her phone charging in the kitchen. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I knew her passcode, it hadn't changed in years. When I opened her messages, my heart sank. There was a thread with someone saved as Karen, but it wasn't Karen. It was Josh. The texts were intimate. Not graphic, but clearly not the kind of thing you'd send to just a friend. Things like, "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. I wish I could wake up next to you every day. I felt sick. My legs almost gave out." I quickly snapped pictures of the messages with my phone and put hers back on the counter. She didn't suspect a thing. After the kids left for school, I told her I had a meeting and left the house. But instead, I drove to the park and sat in my car, staring at the photos. The text confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't just lying, she was having an affair. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I walked into the living room, where Ashley was scrolling through her phone like everything was fine. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was steady, but inside I was a wreck. She glanced up, annoyed. "About what now?" I sat down across from her, pulled out my phone, and showed her the pictures of her messages with Josh. Her face went pale. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at the screen. "Explain this," I said, my voice cracking. She finally looked up, her eyes full of anger. "You went through my phone? Are you serious right now? You don't get to play the victim, Ashley," I shot back. "Who the hell is Josh? And don't you dare tell me it's Karen again." She huffed and crossed her arms. "Fine. Yes, I've been talking to Josh. But it's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "It's not what I think. Ashley, he said he wished he could wake up next to you every day. That's not exactly platonic." She looked away, her jaw tight. "It's complicated," she mumbled. "No," I said firmly. "It's not. You're cheating, Ashley. You've been lying to me, to our family. And I deserve to know the truth." For the first time, she looked scared. "It's just, we've been having problems, and he listens to me, okay? He makes me feel wanted. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't even respond. After Ashley's confession, I just sat there, staring at her. My mind was a tornado of emotions: anger, heartbreak, disbelief. The silence hung heavy between us until I finally managed to ask, "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then sighed. "A few months. We started texting after a work happy hour, and things just escalated from there." "A few months?" I repeated, my voice rising. "And all this time, you've been lying to me, to our kids? Sneaking around, pretending everything is fine? I didn't plan for this to happen," she snapped, her defensive tone cutting through my pain. "It's not like I woke up one day and decided to cheat on you. I've been unhappy, okay? We've both been unhappy." That was her justification? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So instead of talking to me, your husband, you decided to turn to Josh? That's how you fix things?" She looked away, her arms crossed. "I didn't think you'd understand. You're always so busy, always so focused on work, or the kids. I needed something for myself." Her words felt like daggers. I wanted to yell, to scream, to throw something, but I didn't. I just stood up and walked out of the room. I spent that night on the couch, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those texts, heard Ashley's voice blaming me for her actions. By morning, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. When Ashley came downstairs, she tried to talk to me, but I wasn't ready. "I can't do this right now," I told her. She looked frustrated but backed off, giving me the space I needed. I spent the next few days trying to function like normal, but it was impossible. Every interaction with her felt fake, forced. She was suddenly overly attentive, trying to act like nothing had happened, but it only made things worse. I couldn't look at her without feeling a mixture of love and hate. At work, I couldn't focus. My boss asked if I was okay, and I brushed it off, saying I was just dealing with some personal stuff. But inside, I was falling apart. I started obsessing over the details. Was it just texts? Or had it gone further? I thought about asking her, but I wasn't sure I could handle the answer. The uncertainty was eating me alive. That's when I decided I needed more proof. I couldn't confront her again without knowing the full extent of what she'd done. I hated myself for it, but I started keeping tabs on her, checking her location, monitoring her phone. I told myself it was the only way to get the answers I needed. What I found? It shattered me. I kept digging, even though every step felt like I was driving a knife deeper into my own heart. I checked Ashley's texts with Josh again, this time reading back further than before. That's when I saw the messages that confirmed my worst fears. There were mentions of meeting up. Messages like, "I loved spending the night with you. You're amazing. Can't wait to see you again, same place tomorrow." It wasn't just emotional, it was physical. My wife had crossed every line, and there was no way to deny it now. I also found a message from Ashley to Josh where she said, "We have to be more careful. He's been suspicious lately." She knew. She knew I was catching on, and instead of coming clean, she doubled down on the lies. At that moment, I realized the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd shared 8 years of my life with, was a stranger. I couldn't stay silent any longer. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I told Ashley we needed to talk. She hesitated but followed me into the living room. I didn't waste any time. I pulled up the messages on my phone and shoved it in her face. "I know everything," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You've been lying to me, to our family. You've been sleeping with him." Ashley's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked panicked. But then, she shifted back to that defensive tone I'd come to hate. "You've been spying on me? That's a complete invasion of my privacy. Are you kidding me right now?" I exploded. "You're worried about your privacy while you've been sneaking around and cheating on me? What about our marriage? What about our kids?" She stood up, throwing her hands in the air. "I made a mistake, okay? I'm sorry. But you weren't exactly the perfect husband either, you know." Her words hit me like a slap. "You're really going to try and blame me for this? You're the one who betrayed me, Ashley. Not the other way around." For the first time, her facade cracked. She broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want this to happen. I swear. But I was lonely. You were always so busy, and Josh, he made me feel special. I couldn't listen anymore. Do you even understand what you've done?" I said, my voice cold. "You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything we built together. How do we come back from this, Ashley? Can we even come back from this?" She didn't answer. She just sobbed into her hands, and for the first time, I realized that I didn't feel sorry for her. After Ashley broke down, I just left her there and went to our bedroom. I didn't sleep. How could I? I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head, the lies, the betrayal, the messages. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed space. When Ashley came into the room, her eyes were red and puffy. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "There's nothing left to say," I replied. "I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm taking a few days to clear my head." "Please don't leave," she said, her voice cracking. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." I shook my head. "You should have thought about that before you got into bed with him." Then I grabbed a bag, packed enough clothes for a few days, and left without another word. I stayed at a motel across town. It wasn't much, but it gave me the distance I needed to think. Being away from her, and the house filled with memories of us, felt like a small relief, but the weight of the situation was still crushing. While at the motel, I decided to dig deeper into Josh. I needed to understand who this guy was and how he had wormed his way into my wife's life. A little bit of social media sleuthing revealed more than I expected. Josh wasn't just some coworker, he was married. Married with 2 kids. His social media painted a picture of a loving family man, but now I knew it was all a lie. He was just as much a cheater as Ashley. Fueled by anger, I considered reaching out to his wife to tell her everything. She deserved to know the truth, just like I had. But then I hesitated. Would that make things worse? Would it drag me into more drama than I could handle? Instead, I saved the screenshots and sat on the decision. I couldn't ignore the fact that his wife and kids were innocent in all this, just like mine. But knowing his secret gave me a small sense of power in a situation where I felt completely powerless. By the end of the second day, I decided I had to go back home, not for Ashley, but for my kids. They deserved stability, and I wasn't going to let her mess ruin their lives. I still didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Josh or Ashley dictate how this ended. When I got home, Ashley was waiting for me in the living room. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her makeup was smudged, her hair unkempt. For a second, I almost felt bad for her, almost. "I'm glad you're back," she said quietly. "I'm not back for you," I replied. "I'm here for the kids. We're going to keep this civil for their sake, but don't mistake this for forgiveness." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just want to make things right." I ignored her and went to check on the kids, who were playing in the backyard. Seeing them, so blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their home, broke my heart. I vowed to protect them from this mess as much as I could. Later that night, Ashley tried to talk to me again. She begged for counseling, saying we could work through this if we just tried. "I'll cut off all contact with Josh," she promised. "I'll block him, delete his number, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us." But I couldn't give her an answer. I wasn't sure if there was anything left to save. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to confront Josh. I wasn't sure what I hoped to accomplish, but I needed to face him. I found his number in Ashley's phone and called him. When he answered, I said, "This is Ashley's husband. We need to talk." He tried to play dumb at first, but when I mentioned his wife and kids, his tone changed. "Look, man, I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he stammered. "Save it," I snapped. "This isn't about you and your excuses. This is about my family. You don't get to walk away from this unscathed." His voice dropped. "What do you want?" "I want you out of our lives. No texts, no calls, nothing. You don't exist to her anymore. And if you ever so much as think about contacting her again, I'll tell your wife everything." There was a long pause, then he muttered, "Fine." I hung up, feeling a small sense of relief. But it didn't last long. That evening, Ashley's phone buzzed while she was putting the kids to bed. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from Josh. "We need to talk ASAP. So much for staying away." This time, I didn't bother confronting Ashley. I simply took a screenshot, forwarded it to Josh's wife along with a brief explanation, and hit send. The fallout? That's where things got really messy. It didn't take long for the response to come. Josh's wife, whom I'll call Lisa, called me within minutes of receiving the screenshots. She was frantic, her voice shaking as she asked me to confirm everything. I told her what I knew, about the texts, the meetings, and the physical affair. She broke down, sobbing into the phone, and all I could do was apologize for the pain my message had caused. But I knew she deserved the truth. That night, Lisa confronted Josh. From what I later heard through mutual connections, their argument was explosive. She threw him out of the house and told him not to come back. It felt like justice, but it didn't make me feel any better about my own situation. Ashley, on the other hand, was furious when she found out what I'd done. "How could you drag Lisa into this?" she shouted. "You've made everything worse." "No," I replied coldly. "You made everything worse when you decided to cheat. I'm done covering for you. If you didn't want this to blow up, you should have thought about that before sleeping with another man." For the first time, she didn't have a response. The days that followed were tense, but I finally had the clarity I needed to make a decision. I sat Ashley down one evening after the kids had gone to bed. "I've been thinking about this a lot," I began. "And I've realized I can't keep living like this. I can't look at you without seeing the lies, the betrayal. You broke something that can't be fixed." Her face crumpled, and she started crying. "Please, we can go to counseling. We can try to fix it. I'll do anything." But I shook my head. "This isn't something counseling can fix, Ashley. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed our family. And I can't trust you anymore. I deserve better than this, and so do the kids." She begged, pleaded, even got down on her knees, but my mind was made up. I told her I wanted a divorce. In the weeks that followed, I filed the paperwork. We've kept things civil for the kids' sake, but the relationship is over. I've started going to therapy, not to move on quickly, but to figure out how to heal and become the best version of myself for my children. If there's one thing I've learned from this nightmare, it's that trust is everything in a marriage. Once it's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. For anyone out there going through something similar, my advice is this: listen to your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting yourself. I'm still picking up the pieces, but I know one thing for sure: I won't settle for less than I deserve ever again. Thanks for reading, everyone. Writing this has been cathartic, and I hope my story helps someone out there feel less alone.